Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 1, Chapter 14, Morgan-Jeterix. So I hope everyone out there has had a safe and fun and happy Thanksgiving. I know I did. I'm a little late with this recording because a lot of things were going on this week. One, it's Thanksgiving, and my mom came up and spent 5 days with us, and love my mom a lot, but oh my god, it's like I was in high school over again. What are you eating? Why are you eating so fast? Why'd you choose that when you could have had this? Blah blah blah. Blah 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 blah. I mean, she's my mom. That's her job to keep me in line. But at this point I am a grown-ass adult, and I will eat at a speed that I feel comfortable, and I will eat what I choose to eat, and that's just the way it is and the way it has to be. Also, we recarpeted and repainted my studio office here, so all kinds of stuff is going on. But my office is rebuilt at last. I'm back online, and if I were to rate I love cooking the Thanksgiving feast. I do most of the cooking here. My wife does most of the eating. And I love cooking the meal. I love cooking the turkey. My mom was notorious for drying food out. I always make sure everything's nice and juicy and tasty. This time, though, I don't know what the heck happened. Probably because my mom was around. Maybe she has some sort of aura around her that everything in her vicinity just dries out. But that turkey was awful. It wasn't brined. I should have read the package. We got a non-brine bird. It was tasteless. It was dry. Oh god, I was pissed. I'd give my performance for this Thanksgiving meal a C-. I didn't even want to cut it up and keep. I love leftover turkey. I didn't even want it. I'm like, throw this son of a bitch out onto the street where it belongs. But that's a waste. Gotta be thankful for things you have. So I cut it up anyways. It's sitting in the fridge. I don't know if I'll ever eat it because my wife doesn't eat leftovers. But anyways, last week we saw the exciting conclusion to the battle with the Druries, and since this second part of the Belmont Saga is called Against the Druries, and these are the Drury brothers, you figure, okay, roll credits. They're all four of them appear to be dead, at least we think. So there's no need to proceed any further. I don't know why there's 200 more pages in this book. The Druries and Against the Druries have been dispensed with. But, hearken, are they really? We will see, as the two of them, Chance and Lemuel, were floating around out in space without a spacesuit, and they appeared to be just fine. Clem, who got shot with Stenstrom's Nth pistols, and the Nths can slay anything, did not make an appearance, so apparently he is dead. Nobody else, though, got shot with the Nths. Eventually, Stenstrom shot Lemuel through the window with an Nth, and he appeared to die. And then, as Chance was floating away into the naked belly of space, they did a wing roll and slapped his ass hard, and he went rocketing off in some random direction. Now, seeing this performance, this somewhat supernatural abilities that these scabrous, unhealthy looking brothers appear to have, Stenstrom gets the thought, well, Tara put a 50 caliber auto fire into innocent Drury and he dropped like a stone. Obviously, taking a bunch of 50 caliber shots at close range to your torso, not too many people are going to come back from that. You are basically going to be blown apart. Not just by it's everything. The pressure wave that a 50 caliber slug will kill you. There's a lot of things that are going to kill you when you get hit by a 50 caliber bullet. And Innocent took a bunch of them. An auto fire from an SK probably put about 10 or 15 shots in him just with a microsecond burst. But seeing Chance and Lemuel floating about in space, happy as you please, Stenstrom gets the idea, well, I want to go down there and check. check this out. Make sure he's good and dead. I'm going to put some shots into him. Then I'm going to flush him out the airlock. Meanwhile, Chance Drury sent a bogus message to Lieutenant Gwendolyn and the Demophalon John, impersonating Stenstrom's voice and giving her some sort of bogus coordinates. And then he mentions some sort of creatures he wants to feed Gwendolyn and her crew to, known as the Cronins. Stenstrom and Aram are like, what the frag is a Cronin? But Tara knows what a Cronin is coming from Baz. The Cronins are fixtures of Baz lore, that they are some sort of evil spirits that can haunt your dreams, make you see things, make you experience things. You have no idea if what you're seeing and experiencing is real or not. And during the time of the Cronins, I'm probably not remembering, I probably should have researched my own work, but what the time period was, but it only happened like once every 4 years. I think I said 400 at some point. No, it wasn't 400. It was about 4 years for about 2 weeks. And then all the people on Baz would start hearing things and seeing things, and they would get hurt. They'd fall off cliffs, all kinds of things. It seems like these Cronins were trying to lead them to their doom. And so during the time of the Cronins, the Bazers just sort of hole up in their house, not go anywhere or really do anything, and just kind of ride it out as best they can. And then eventually the butt-dripping naked hero from Baz, the suitor of Princess Gallia, Darius Jones, who is one of the sisters Itmen, it faced the Cronins and defeated them. That's all according to Baz lore. And he had with him one of the 20 instances of Princess Gallia. Princess Gallia was like a giant who had 20 arms, and Darius Jones jilted her at the altar, but he came to take her help when facing the Cronins. He broke off one of her arms, and it grew into a full-sized, not giant-sized, but normal-sized Princess Gallia, and together they went off to take care of the Cronins. And whatever they did, it was successful, because the Cronins never really happened again. And it's just, now the time of the Cronins is just an excuse to stay home and get drunk. So, that's where we are last week. Stenstrom's going down. Check out Innocent Jury, put some shots into him, and then throw him off the ship. And they're trying to get a desperate message to the Demophalon John and inform them that you were duped, and wherever they said to go to, don't go to, because it probably won't lead to any good end. So, this week, we go aboard the Demophalon John and see what exactly transpires there. This week, Part 1, Chapter 14, Morgan-Jeterix. And we're actually getting, this is a very short chapter, but again, I'm late, so I don't have really time to edit this and get it put into a video form in any sort of timely matter. So this one's just going to be a short one. And then next week we will concede. We only got 4 or 5 chapters left in Part 1. And then we get to Part 2 of the book, which is known as The Woman in Gray. How about that? We'll find out a little about the Lady in Gray, that our villain, the incognito fiend of Calvert, and crazy lady who has been pulling the strings behind the scenes. But this is now Part 1, Chapter 14, Morgan-Jeterix. Her face was killing her. Captain Gwendolyn snatched the report out of her crewman's hand. She looked at it, her green eyes flashing. "Alistair, I told you I wanted this status report 3 hours ago," she yelled, her voice ugly. Her cut face had been completely sealed, but it hurt like hell, and she felt mad and short. To top things off, she was quite worried about Paymaster Stenstrom. What had happened? Where did he go? Her worry and pain, all those things mixed together in her soul and let the grizzly bear come out in full force. "Yes, Captain, I'm sorry." He stood there looking at the floor. Gwendolyn felt a wave of anger pass over her and was on the verge of giving him a good tongue lashing. But for her new friend, the paymaster, she was trying to turn a new leaf and better herself. She sighed and took a deep breath, allowing her anger to diminish. Her face was stinging, creating pain that was just bearable. "It's all right. Just try to be more punctual next time," she said lightly, touching the wound. "Aye, ma'am." She paced the small bridge. Crewmen bustled about. "Sensing," she said, turning to a crewman near the front of the bridge. "Do you have anything yet?" "No, ma'am. The sector is clear." "A dead warbird cannot simply vanish. The seeker has to be here somewhere. These are the correct coordinates they gave us, yes?" "Yes, ma'am." "Very well. Keep looking." The navigator checked his settings. "Ma'am, I must inform you that we are currently well out the shipping lanes on the lee side of Drury's Belt. I highly advise we return to the lanes and call for an organized search party." "Noted. Keep looking. The sooner we find the seeker, the sooner we're windward of Drury's Belt and back in the lanes." She turned her attention to the comm officer. "Comm, send a fleet. Advise them of our situation, current position, and heading." "Aye, ma'am. Message sent." "Thank you. Now raise the bosun. Tell him as soon as we make contact with the seeker, I want him to run out a Christmas gun. He shall then carefully, and I emphasize carefully, shoot out their improvised drive engine, and we will board. I want to ensure Paymaster Stenstrom doesn't suffer a change of mind. I want him and his crew brought safely out of there as soon as possible. No more games. This is getting too dangerous." "Aye, ma'am." "Once aboard, he and his crew shall be treated with the utmost respect and courtesy. Understood? I expect all present to go out of our way to make them feel welcome. So let's look lively." The holographic displays moving about the navigator's head spun. Something blinked. "Ma'am, new contact bearing 7:45 a.m. of 11:16 p.m. Is it the seeker?" "Looks to be. It is a large metallic object offering the mag reflection that is typical for a Straylight-class vessel. It's not flying its standard colors." "Well, they must be shut down. Pilot, intercept solution. Comm, send a seeker and raise Paymaster Stenstrom immediately." The helmsman, pressing buttons at his small chair, banked the ship, and soon the dark mass of the seeker jogged into view in the display. The Demophalon John had a small view screen and several large, hollow-infused blue-filtered windows that were lit up with various displays and readouts. Gwendolyn often didn't look at the screen. She looked out a window and saw, far off, a small form hollowed with a red circle. The ship was still quite a ways off in the distance, and Gwendolyn glanced at the screen to see enhanced detail. It was the Seeker, sure enough. The Seeker was dark, all running lights off, and the roving eye of the main sensor dead. She was flipped over in relationship to their orientation, and was slowly spinning to port. "Comm," Gwendolyn said. "Any luck raising the Seeker?" "No, ma'am." "They must have blown their engine. Keep trying. Are we detecting any venting?" "No, ma'am. The Seeker reads as whole with a sufficient pressure of breathable gases within to support life." The doors to the bridge opened, and in walked Morgan-Jeterix, decked out in her black uniform with an array of silver tools peeking out of her pockets, and a winged helmet sitting on her head. She was a Hospitaller of Samaritan class. Scouting ships normally didn't have a Samaritan aboard, but being favored with Admiral Derleth, he had managed to get one for her regardless. Morgan was a lean but solid lady with dark blonde hair, braided in many thin beaded twists under her silver helmet. Most Hospitaller were Johnnies from Onaris, but Morgan was not a Johnny. She was a lady of Thompson, an old family from the Hallow region of Cana. She became a Hospitaller, Gwendolyn had heard, because she wanted to, because she felt a personal calling. Her smooth skin had that tanned hide look that many Hallas had. She wore a large ring on her right hand emblazoned with a proud E for Ephesians, an esoteric order within the Hospitallers that Gwendolyn didn't know too much about. She and Lieutenant Gwendolyn didn't get along most of the time. Sometimes they did, and sometimes they were just on the cusp of becoming friends, but that was more the exception than the norm. Their personalities appeared to be too similar in certain regards, and therefore they clashed at inconvenient but predictable moments. Being a Hospitaller, Morgan wasn't under Captain Gwendolyn's direct command, a fact she enjoyed pointing out often. The two frequently fought openly and were occasionally not on speaking terms, but Morgan was a good Hospitaller, and that was a handy asset to have around. Morgan had engaged in several brief but very public and rather messy affairs with some of Gwendolyn's crew, both male and female, which she did not approve of at all. She had also heard whispers that Morgan had a thing for her as well, though she tried not to think about it much. Morgan was also a registered empath and supposedly bore a body-length tattoo that only the sisters could detect, branding her as such. The Thompsons had a reputation for being highly empathic, to involuntarily know the feelings and surface thoughts of another without overtly being telepathic. Being empathic, Morgan also had the annoying habit of tapping into Gwendolyn's thoughts and saying out loud what she was thinking. It was not only frustrating for Gwendolyn, but embarrassing as well to have a running tap from the wellspring of her mind to the open, wagging mouth of Morgan. She hadn't heard of Morgan doing that to anybody else, just her. It was mortifying. Anything coming out of Morgan's mouth could be hot right off of her brain. Morgan adjusted her helmet, as it always seemed to sit askew on her head atop of all those tightly run braids, and she walked up to Gwendolyn. "I recommend that you sit a spell," she said in her Hala-inspired Thompson twang. "You actually lost a fair amount of blood from that cut before I could get it stopped." "I've work to attend to," Gwendolyn replied curtly. "Do you need something?" "Yeah, I'm worried about him out there too. Tough to be all prim and proper when you're worried, isn't it? I could give you a sedative." There she goes again. "I really don't know what you're talking about, Morgan." "I've heard he's really handsome." "Who is?" "Paymaster Stenstrom." Gwendolyn flushed up. "What do you want, Morgan? I'm really rather busy." "Reeling in the paymaster? I know. I wanted to share my findings with you. That cut you received, I know how it was made." "All right, let's hear it." Morgan looked around, seeing the crew moving about the bridge. "In private, Captain?" "I've no time for dramatics, Morgan. Helm, match PM base with the Seeker and lock." She gave Morgan a hard look. "Out with it." Morgan huffed. "Fine then. Your cut was made with shadow tech, no doubt about it. A micropoint beam of it, to be precise. The presence of shadow tech prevented your blood from clotting. You would have bled out in short order had I not sealed it." Gwendolyn stopped what she was doing. "How in the name of creation did I get cut with shadow tech?" "Well, you tell me." And Morgan suddenly looked around. "What was that noise?" "What noise?" "That," she said impatiently. "That loud beeping sound. It sounds like an alarm of some sort to me." The crew looked at Morgan, clearly thinking her mad. "I don't hear an alarm, Morgan," Gwen said, impatient. She spun around. "You're telling me you cannot hear that? Creation, my germs are going to burst. Beep, 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 beep." She turned to the comm officer and pointed at him. "You! What are you doing?" The comm was confused. "Pardon, ma'am?" he said. You're standing there with your arms held out in midair, touching nothing." He looked down. "I'm manning my position at the comm." Morgan pointed to his left. The comm's over there. "Sir, you understand me? You're standing over nothing right now." Morgan glanced at the windows. And what, may I ask, is that?" she said, pointing at the window. By this point, the crew stopped what they were doing and became a bit apprehensive. Hospitallers often did strange things, but this display was too much. We are currently involved in a rescue and recovery operation, Morgan. Thank you for the update. Please allow us to continue. I believe you are upsetting my crew. Morgan pushed her helmet back. What are we rescuing? Paymaster Stenstrom and his crew off the Warbird Seeker. Is that not obvious? Well, what's that outside? Morgan pointed at the window again. Oh, dear creation, we nearly got creamed by an asteroid just now. Gwendolyn looked at the screen. There, she saw the approaching form of the Seeker floating alone in a clear field. An asteroid? As I said, there's nothing out there but the Seeker, whom we are endeavoring to rescue. Have you gone blind? Morgan marched up to one of the windows. It doesn't look like any warbird I've ever seen. It looks to me like we're heading straight for a small cluster of planetoids. Gwendolyn turned back to the screen. There was the Seeker, slowly approaching, its orientation now in sync with theirs after the helm corrected for it. Well, Morgan, I think you need to take one of your potions and rest up a tad. She thought back to Paymaster Stenstrom and one of the insults he once used on her. Perhaps your braids are a bit too tight and your skull requires circulation. There, that was a good one. See, he was already having a good influence on her. Morgan didn't appreciate the joke. Captain, you know as well as I that my house can see through cloaked illusions. So you enjoy saying, I think we're flying into one right this moment. Morgan's eyes grew wide. Grab on to something, everybody! Brace for impact! And before Gwendolyn could say anything in reply, the ship was rocked by a massive collision. Everything went dark on the Demophalon John. And with that, we conclude Part 1, Chapter 14, Morgan-Jeterix. So, there we go. We see a brief glimpse aboard the Demophalon John. We see Morgan-Jeterix, Lady of Thompson, who is the ship's Hospitaller. And as I mentioned, Hospitallers are their own sect. They don't really follow fleet orders. They follow orders from their sect, the Hospitallers, the Grand Order of Hospitallers. A ship's captain to them really doesn't have any authority. If you read the original League of Elder books, Captain Davidge with his Hospitaller Inez of Inari. Inez is not under Captain Davidge's command, but they're friends, so Captain Davidge earned Inez's respect, and he generally does what Captain Davidge asks, so he's under no obligation to actually do so. But they're friends, they've known each other for a long time. That holds a lot of weight. Morgan and Gwen really don't get along too well. Morgan is much too flamboyant in her lifestyle for Gwen's liking. Gwen's very conservative and very starched and button up, while Morgan is a free spirit, is clearly bisexual. Not that it means anything, but and she'll have a messy affair with anybody, man or woman. Gwendolyn's even heard that Morgan has a little thing for her too, but that's not something Gwen is interested in pursuing. That's just Gwen. She's just kind of a stodgy, uninspired person in those regards. Morgan-Jeterix also, exercising her empathic abilities, kind of can read Gwendolyn's surface thoughts and just reel them off and speak them out. And she does that a lot. And if you've read the Shadow Tech Goddess books, we see Morgan has a habit of doing that frequently, just saying out loud what Gwen is thinking, and it drives Gwen crazy. We also know from the Shadow Tech Goddess that Morgan has a secret, a deep secret. She's not exactly what she appears to be, but that's for another set of books. Don't really have to worry about that in this one. And Morgan also has the ability, due to her house and being an empath, a registered empath, that she can see through illusions. And apparently, the Demophalon John is in a really complex illusion. There's those gosh darn Cronins again. And what did we say? The Cronins are masters of illusion, of making you see and feel things that aren't there. So while everyone on the bridge sees the Seeker off in the distance that they're endeavoring to rescue. Morgan-Jeterix doesn't see the Seeker. She sees that they are headed for a small planet. Whatever's on that planet is probably not good and probably means them no good. And if you recall, several chapters ago with the lantern, as the beam panned about, Tara had a brief glimpse of a planet that they couldn't see otherwise until the lantern's beam uncovered it. Nothing can hide from the lantern's beam. And when the beam panned past it, this planet popped up on Tara's scanners and was gone just as fast. Well, apparently that's where the Demophalon John is headed. Whatever these Cronin creatures are, mythical or not, we're going to find that out shortly, as the Demophalon John, at the end of the chapter, has crashed into it, roughly. You know what? Let's go ahead and do it. I'll just get some coffee going and do some midnight oil, as I gotta edit this. There's a lot of editing with these videos. I know a lot of YouTubers don't edit squat. I do. I take out all my flubs. I take out all my ums and all my excessive ands. And so those have to come out, and that takes a lot of work. And then I got to edit in the video, as primitive as my gear is. But as far as the sound goes, I have to take out moments of silence, flubs, ums, and so forth, and you get a pretty clean product, but it takes time. But I'll just burn some midnight oil. Let's read chapter 15, A Falling Star. And here we're going to be introduced to a character that we've seen in many other books, and we've saw as an apparition earlier. Let's get to it. It's only a few pages long, so let's knock it out. Lady Alesta prayed by the great tree, hoping for a bit of inspiration. It was odd. She usually found divine guidance coming to her at the strangest of times, while sleeping, eating dinner, or doing her chores, just not when she was praying like she was supposed to do. It was getting cold, and she wanted her bed. She had stoked the fire in her small room before coming out, so that it should be nice and warm by now. Her room would be snug and toasty for her upon returning. A large bell mounted on a post near the tree was showing signs of frosting over. She was wearing the standard clothing of her order, a white woolen smock that went down to her knees, lined with homespun frills, a belt of red and green shells stitched together and tasseled with gold thread that she had loomed herself, several necklaces made of smooth painted wooden beads and the same red and green shells as her belt, and a long green brocade robe lined with embroidered gold fabric. Most everything she wore she had made herself, and her belt and her necklaces were infused with the love of her star. They protected her mind and shielded her from sight. Her thick black hair was held up with several woolen sticks stuck near the nape of her neck, creating a large onion-shaped bun. Without the sticks, her hair would probably have gone down to her ankles. She hadn't cut it in years. Sometimes she wondered if she had a special someone, a person to whom she'd given her heart. What would he think of her appearance? The clothes, her thick hair, her unshod feet. The road she had chosen for herself was indeed a lonely one. Her feet were getting cold. She wished she was allowed to wear shoes when praying, but they were forbidden. Cold and tired of kneeling, she stood up and brushed herself off. No inspiration was coming to her. She rubbed her hands and blew on them, her breath steaming through her stinging fingers. She turned to make her way across the green back to her room. She looked up at the close sky one last time. She could see the star shining there to the west, the star that only she and her brothers and sisters could see, the star of Marion lighting up the sky in a yellow veil. She had been a pilgrim of Marion since she was very young, for over 100 years now, growing up with her family in Dare on the windswept Isle of Barrow. She had always been able to see a star that nobody else could. She was a lady of the Dare line, 10th order. There were a lot of Dares in Dare, and her order was placed somewhere in the middle. They weren't the richest, but nor were they impoverished outlanders either. The star she saw was a bright, yellowish globe, easily the biggest star in the sky. On clear nights, and sometimes during the day, she even thought she could see a red cloud moving around the star in a slow spiral. She asked her father what the star was called. It was so pretty. "What star?" her father asked. "That one. Just there." "Where?" It became clear to her in time that she, of all her brothers and sisters and friends, was the only one who could see that star with the red cloud. And sometimes that made her happy, as she had something so beautiful all to herself. But other times it made her sad. Such a pretty thing should be shared, should be available for all to see. When she was 23, she went to Dare Market with her parents to gather items for the fall feast. The fall feast was a big event in the Barrow region, celebrated proudly in the cities of Dare, Saga, Rhoda, and Tuck, and there was much planning to be done. When they got to market, there was quite a commotion going on beyond the usual comings and goings of shoppers and traders. Many were gathered around the square and were hooting and hollering at a small group of people wearing green robes with white smocks. The people were laughing at them. Alesta went to her mother. "Mother, who are those people, and why are they being laughed at?" Her mother tried not to look in their direction. "Those people are pilgrims of Marion, just a cult of harmless zealots from the mainland." "Why are they being laughed at?" "Because they have silly ideas. Just ignore them." Alesta was curious. She pulled away from her family and approached the crowd gathered around the pilgrims. There were 5 of them standing in the town square. They were trying to pass out literature which nobody seemed to want to take, and they had a collection basket which had a fair amount of money in it. "Here, for real clothes and breath mints. Brush your teeth next time, pilgrim," the people derided as they tossed in the money. Nobody was harming the pilgrims or roughing them about, but those in the crowd were sharp and vulgar with their jabs and quips. Through the heckling, she listened to what they said. "It is our sworn mission to bring you good news," they said, shouting above the noise. "We bring you news of the elders. They are not gone. They are with us still. I don't see them. Where are they? Hiding in the clouds, surely full of tuck and play. Ha 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 ha!" The pilgrims took the ribbing with a serene patience. "The elders are there for you to see. All one need do is look. All I see is you with your muddy feet and outrageous skirt, quite out of line and well off the hook. Ha 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 ha! Put some pants on, pilgrim, your legs are a fright. With wickets like those, the ladies surely take flight. Ah ha 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 ha!" The pilgrims took it in stride. "The star of Marion is plain. Lift you your eyes and revel in its light. Again, your legs are blinding all else from sight," a jokester mused. "I see nothing but pale skin and patches of hair. He's either a very ugly troll or possibly a half-shaven bear." Alesta spoke up. "I see it," she said in a tiny voice. Everybody quieted down and turned to her. The pilgrims were shocked. "You? My dear, you see the star?" "Yes." The pilgrims made their way through the crowd and approached her. The people in the crowd rubbed their chins. "What star? Where is it?" "It's over there," she said, pointing to the west. The pilgrims were open-mouthed. "You can see it! You can see the star!" "It's a big yellow star, and it's always out. It has that funny red cloud floating around it." Before a year had passed, Lady Alesta herself stood with the Pilgrims of Marion, wearing homemade clothes and green robes, her fine gowns of dare and delicate shoes cast aside. She held literature and got laughed at in the town squares of Cana and beyond. She had given up everything she had to join them. Her mother had gone into mourning over her decision, grieving for her daughter as if she were dead. "Don't cry, mother," she had said. "I hear a voice that will not yield. No lord or goodly man will have you. You will be alone forever, wearing rags," her mother said. "I believe this is my calling. This is what I am here to do." The star called to her, and she became a Pilgrim of Marion. As she settled into her life with the Pilgrims, she found that their order was much more pervasive and committed than she first thought. There was more to the Pilgrims of Marion than harmless oddities good for a laugh in the town squares. They served the Star of Marion. She learned to speak their secret language. There they spoke to the star, and she discovered that it watched over them, and that most could not see it, not even the sisters. They told her that the elders were there, orbiting the star, waiting for them to be rejoined with their children. She went to the place of Westwood and marveled at its beauty. And there was much work to do. The star demanded it. In Westwood, they sent Alesta out into the night when they thought she was ready, to pray, to seek enlightenment. Whatever the star's judgment for her would dictate the rest of her life, no matter what. On her knees in the snow, she prayed for hours, her skin freezing, her feet numb, her fingers close to frostbite. None of it mattered. Her efforts were rewarded. In delirium, she heard the star speak to her, and it said, "Save all those who fall astray." Such was her command, and she would follow it without fear or question. She walked the Marion's road with her brethren for decades, and was taken into the stars with her brothers and sisters to a secret place where she could pray and do as she was commanded. Her road was to be the most dangerous. The star commanded it. As she readied to return to her room and modest bed, she saw a star fall. It traced a gentle line across the sky and disappeared behind the nearby planetoid. Adam, the star called it. Hell, others called it. A hideous, haunted place. Alesta often saw stars falling into Adam, and she knew what it meant. She watched the star fall, and a tear came to her eye. "Lost souls! Lost souls!" Her prayers had been answered, though not quite in the way she had expected. Gathering her robe, she ran to the nearby bell and began ringing it, many shards of frost vibrating off as it rang. Beyond, lights in her small village came on in response to her ringing of the bell. She could see outlines of people moving about in their rooms, through their frosty windows, getting dressed. The Pilgrims of Marion, impoverished, laughed at, disregarded, never failed to answer the call of the bell, no matter what the hour. "Save all those who fall astray." In Adam, there shall be many who need saving. And with that, we conclude Part 1, Chapter 15, A Star Falls. So, that is the, I guess we would say, the origin story of Lady Alesta. And we've seen Lady Alesta already earlier in the book in apparition form. That is the image Aram saw through the lantern. And as you know, if you've read the other books, the Shadow Tech Goddess books and so forth, Aram and Alesta are a frequent fixture. They are a couple. They're planning on being wed, but they're going on a long journey for their friend. I would say their love is very solid. It's probably just about as solid as Captain Davidge and Countess Sigillis. They're just right together. And we see how she became a pilgrim of Marion, that she could see this funky star floating in the sky, just like Paymaster Stenstrom's sister Virginia could see it, but she never joined the Pilgrims of Marion. But Alesta heard a voice and fell to calling. And we always mention in passing Westwood, and even the pilgrims that Stenstrom met earlier in Calvert mentioned that they were from Westwood. And it seems like an innocent enough aside, but Westwood, what is Westwood? More importantly, where is Westwood? It's not a city any place. It doesn't appear in any maps. Westwood is a secret place that only the Pilgrims of Marion have access to. It is said by some that Westwood is on this funky star that they can see, the Star of Marion, and there she was trained, and there the star commanded her to save all those who go astray. And that is a very dangerous mission, as Lily's letter to Aram specified, that his love, Lady Alesta, lives at the verge of Edam, verge of hell, this planetoid that's hidden from sight and sound. Not even the fleet with its scanners can see this planetoid, but Alesta can see it, and she lives right on a little patch of green right next to it, looking for people being lured into this planet. And it's her mission, along with her brothers and sisters of her order, to go to this planetoid and rescue them if they can. Alesta looks up and sees a falling star, which I hope you infer is the Demophalon John falling into this planetoid. She rings the bell, and her order awakens from their beds. And their mission will be to try to rescue these fallen people. So, we've met Lady Alesta, got a little brief glimpse into her past. Next week, we shall continue Part 1, Chapter 16, The Druries. We're back aboard the Seeker, and Paymaster Stenstrom is making his way back to the docking ring to do a visual inspection on Innocent Drury, put some shots into him, and then toss him out. With any luck, that's all that will happen. He'll find a dead body that's been blown to smithereens, and that will be that. But this is me we're talking about, so it's probably not going to be that easy. In any event, I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, ate lots of good food, enjoyed your family and friends, and for all those who are not so fortunate, I wish you good tidings, and stay strong, and there's always something out there. Peace out.